The galactic Senate chamber glistened under the artificial light of 7 suns, each one refracted through a crystalline ceiling designed by the Larnax architects, who, incidentally, were extinct. Not due to war. Bad investment in edible architecture. The chamber's marble-like floor echoed with the clicking feet of generals, envoys, and admirals representing 22 galactic species, all present for one unified purpose: to declare war on Earth. Admiral Zarnix of the Imperial Fleet sneered, his face a mass of twitching blue ridges. He leaned over the obsidian table. Humans are nothing more than bipedal accidents, primitive creatures whose greatest achievements involve flavored sugar drinks and weaponizing cooking oil. A murmur of agreement spread across the chamber. The air smelled like smug superiority and star metal cologne. That was when the human representative strolled in. No guards, no entourage, just a tall, middle-aged man with a slight limp, a warm smile, and an unapologetic Hawaiian shirt under a formal blazer. He was holding a cup of black coffee in one hand and a folder labeled Backup Plan in the other. He took a sip, winced, and muttered, "Still tastes like despair." The room fell awkwardly silent. "Good morning," he said cheerfully, though he was 12 hours late by Galactic Standard Time. "Sorry for the delay. Your guards wanted me to leave my coffee at the door. I told them it was the only reason I agreed to come." Zarnix looked him over with contempt. "You are the human representative?" "Ambassador John Halley," the man replied, extending a hand that was clearly going to be ignored. "But you can call me John. Everyone does. Except my mother. She calls me that boy who should have gone into real estate." There was a pause. The aliens didn't know if they were being mocked. John settled into the single human-sized chair. He looked absurdly comfortable. "So," he continued, "I hear you've been discussing our fate in our absence. That's adorable." Empress Vorthy, ancient and towering, shifted slightly. Her translucent skin shimmered. She was old enough to remember the first contact with Earth, and wise enough to remain silent for now. Zarnix slammed a clawed hand on the table. "We are gathered to finalize our response to human aggression. Your species has violated 7 trade accords, ignored direct commands from the High Council, and you sent a sarcastic meme in reply to a declaration of martial law." John blinked. "Which meme?" "The one with the raccoon holding a bazooka, captioned, 'Come and take it, cupcake.'" He shrugged. "Classic." A ripple of confusion rolled through the room. Zarnix snarled, pacing now. "Humanity has proven volatile, undisciplined, unpredictable. You've weaponized irony, refused standardized galactic law, and worst of all, your species consumes recreationally fermented dairy." John leaned forward, eyes twinkling. "You mean cheese?" 100 alien dignitaries recoiled at the word. He smiled wider. "We call it freedom." "You see," Zarnix barked, "they are unfit for galactic society." John took another sip of coffee. "You invited us in. Don't act surprised when we showed up in sandals and rewired the thermostat." Empress Vorthy finally spoke, her voice a melodic hum that resonated across species. "What is your official response, Ambassador Halley, to the impending declaration of war?" John considered that for a moment, as if choosing between breakfast options. Then he reached into his folder and pulled out a single page, unfolded it, and slid it across the table. It read, in bold Comic Sans, "We respectfully acknowledge your declaration of war. In return, please note that humanity has pressed the button." There was a beat of stunned silence. Zarnix leaned in. "You dare threaten us with vague theatrics?" John gestured casually. "Oh, it's not vague. We just did it 5 minutes ago. You might want to check your planetary registers." A holoscreen materialized in the center of the table. One by one, red alerts flared on it. Whole fleets disappearing from radar, planetary systems going dark, communication relays blinking out like fireflies snuffed in the night. Zarnix's ridges twitched violently. "This is impossible." "Nothing's impossible," John replied, spinning his coffee cup. "Just unlikely until humans get bored and decide to make it happen." A Carthan general choked on his own tongue. Vorthy narrowed her many eyes. "What is this button you speak of?" He smiled politely. "Well, you see, a long time ago, right after the third attempt on our sun. Earth's unified governments voted to put in a contingency. Something subtle. Something that would only activate if galactic war was declared. Took about 30 years to set up. We call it the Smile Protocol. Smile, another ambassador echoed, bewildered. Yes, John said, because if you're still seeing us smile, it's already too late. The chamber was no longer silent, it was tense. The difference was in the air, like the moment before a storm, when the wind pauses to listen. Zarnik stood slowly, glaring with righteous fury. We will retaliate. For every ship lost, we will burn 10 of yours. For every system darkened, we will erase entire bloodlines. John's smile never faltered. That's a bold plan. Have you tried turning your fleet off and on again? Zarnix lunged across the table. Vorthy held out a single hand and stopped him mid-air with a pulse of gravity manipulation. The admiral crashed into the floor and stayed there, growling. I advise caution, Vorthy said, looking not at Zarnix, but at John. John's face sobered. Look, I get it. We look small, fragile, distracted. You see humans arguing about pop stars and cat videos, and you think, surely they can't be dangerous. But here's the thing, everything we do, even our chaos, is strategic. You think you're dealing with a chaotic species. You're wrong. You're dealing with the only species that managed to survive its own extinction-level stupidity multiple times, and called it Tuesday. A silence swept the room again, this time weighted with understanding. He stood and adjusted his blazer, revealing a small pin on the lapel, the symbol of Earth's unified command. A chess piece, a queen. We didn't press the button because we wanted war, he continued. We pressed it because you did. Because no matter how many times we offered peace, someone in this chamber laughed at us. Someone mistook kindness for weakness, smile for submission. He leaned over the table now, his tone sharp enough to shave bone. Big mistake. The room was frozen. Even the diplomatic aides stopped breathing. Go home, he said, softer now. Check your systems. Count your ships. And then ask yourselves this. What kind of species puts their most dangerous weapon in the hands of someone who wears a pineapple shirt to war? He turned to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back over his shoulder. Oh, and one more thing, he added lightly. That wasn't the only button. The door hissed, shut behind him. Back in the chamber, no one moved. No one spoke. On the table, the holomap updated again. 17 more ships gone. No trace. No sound. Just vanished. Vorthy finally broke the silence, whispering the words many had heard in ancient warnings but never believed. Deathworlders, she said. We poked a sleeping apex predator and smiled while doing it. And in that moment, every member of the Galactic Empire understood. They hadn't just declared war on a species. They had declared war on a planet that had already planned their funeral. The first indicator that something had gone terribly wrong didn't come from the Fleet Command or the Planetary Defense Grid. It came from a traffic drone orbiting Glavrex Prime. At precisely 0800 GST, the drone attempted to ping the Imperial cruiser Vigilant Maw for its entry vector. The signal didn't bounce. No delay, no interference. Just absence. Like asking a question in an empty room and realizing the walls are gone. Within 5 minutes, the planetary control towers reported the same anomaly. No response from 16 capital-class warships that had been stationed in high orbit less than an hour earlier. The ships weren't reporting delayed logs or garbled feeds. They weren't reporting anything, because they weren't there. Admiral Zarnix stormed through the black glass corridors of the High Empire's command center, his breath heaving through flared nostrils. It's a trick. Sensor failure. These primitives don't have technology that can touch our fleet. They're bluffing. Sir, Commander Velkin murmured, triple eyelids blinking nervously. We've confirmed visual loss from 2 independent outposts. There are no explosions, no debris, no gravitational disturbances. They're not destroyed. They're just gone. Zarnix rounded on him. Nothing just disappears. Velkin shrank slightly. Apparently, sir, humans do. Zarnix turned to the central command table. With a holographic projection, of their galaxy-wide fleet grid shimmered. Tiny red dots denoted active ships. 17 were now missing. It was as if someone had erased pixels from a painting. He jabbed a claw at the projection. Run diagnostics. Cross-check with deep brain scans. I want subspace readings. Magnetic echoes. Sensor sweeps. Anything. Technicians scrambled. But within minutes, the numbers kept changing. 23, then 31, then 40. A slow hemorrhage of military might. On the planet Helios, 4, entire comms networks began to fail as if pieces of infrastructure had been quietly uninstalled from reality. On the frozen moon of Batrak, the Empire's top cyber warfare base sent one final message. 2 words in panicked Gal Basic. They're inside. Then silence. In the Grand Chamber, Empress Vorthi watched the cascading failures with a grim stillness. Her thin fingers wrapped tightly around her staff as more red indicators vanished. Admiral, she said at last, her voice cool as mist, recall every fleet that encountered human space in the last 24 cycles. Zarnix resisted the urge to snap back. We will not retreat in the face of illusion. This is no illusion, she replied evenly. This is strategy, and you are already 4 steps behind. The lights flickered, just for a second. But in a chamber designed never to flicker, that second hit harder than any explosion. Across the galaxy, panic was already blooming in dark corners. On the mercantile moon of Elfax, traders watched helplessly as their orbital docks emptied. 10 ships simply vanishing in a flash of static. One moment, bustling with trade. The next, a ghost port. On station ZR-914, a communications specialist named Tivius sat frozen in front of a flashing message window. His fingers hovered above the keys, trembling. He'd been intercepting human military transmissions for months. Most were boring, weather updates, arguments about condiments, inexplicable arguments about whether tacos were sandwiches. But the message that had just arrived was different. It read, "If this message reached you, it means we are giving you a choice. Step away. Go home. This is not your fight. No further warnings will be given." Below it, a file attachment. Tivius ran it through 6 firewalls and opened it on a disposable terminal. It was a photo. A human toddler in a onesie standing on a console covered in alien parts, holding up a wrench and a juice box. The caption read, "Bringing your kid to work day hits different on Earth." He shut the terminal down and resigned mid-shift. Back on Earth, the sky was mostly clear. Birds chirped. Traffic lights changed with zero correlation to the chaos blooming across the stars. In a secure facility beneath what appeared to be an abandoned roller rink in Milwaukee, Doris swiveled in her chair, sipping a slushie the color of uranium. "So, she said, tapping the glowing button with a pinky, "we doing this?" A voice crackled from the overhead speaker. "Already did. Just monitoring now. Smile protocol is in full swing." She nodded and leaned back. "Want to order tacos?" "I swear if you ask me that again." Elsewhere, John Halley stepped off the Galactic Council's lift platform and onto his waiting transport ship. The interior was sparse, just a chair, a data console, and a view of the void. He poured the remainder of his coffee into a small plant growing in the corner. "You survived another trip, Fernando," he said to it. "Good lad." The pilot, a quiet AI unit named Oscar, pinged in. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Empire. They're asking to talk. Zarnix wants to clarify the nature of the button." John sat down and activated the call. Zarnix's face appeared on the screen, visibly frayed. His ridges twitched, and his once-groomed armor was disheveled. "What did you do?" The Admiral growled. "Pressed a button." "What does that mean?" John held up a small plastic toy, the kind found in cereal boxes. He pushed the button on it and a tiny voice said, "Oopsie." "I think that about sums it up," he smiled. Zarnix bared his teeth. "This is a violation of galactic codes. You are deploying weapons we cannot detect, cannot trace. That is against the law of civilization." "We tried civilization," John replied, tapping his chin. "You mocked it. Remember? You said our species didn't belong. Now you're calling for rulebooks." Zarnix slammed a fist on his console. We demand full transparency, or this war continues. You're misunderstanding something, John said, leaning closer. You didn't start a war. You walked into a minefield that was always there. We just stopped warning you about it. The call disconnected abruptly. Back in the command center, Zarnix threw his communicator across the room. Vulcan stepped forward cautiously. Sir, 26 more vessels have vanished. We believe they were mid-hyperspace. There was no exit signal. Zarnix stared blankly. Vulcan hesitated. Sir, perhaps we should pause operations. Re-evaluate. You think they'll stop with our ships? Zarnix hissed. You think they won't move to our cities next? I think, Vulcan said carefully, we need to understand what they've already done before we provoke what they could do. In the private war chambers of the Empress, Vorthy gathered her senior analysts. Their holograms flickered with maps and predictive models. Every simulation ended in the same conclusion. Escalation would lead to annihilation. They are not a tactical species, one advisor said, not in the traditional sense. They weaponize absurdity. They create panic through disproportionate unpredictability. They're predators, another murmured. But cultural ones. The more we fear their madness, the more it becomes real. Empress Vorthy closed her eyes. In the depths of her memory, she recalled an ancient warning from the first ambassadors who met the humans. Do not laugh at their chaos. It is camouflage. Their real weapon is patience, and behind every smile is a list of 10,000 ways to make you regret everything. She stood and turned to her court. Prepare a message, not to the fleet, to Earth. Meanwhile, John received another update from Oscar. Transmission incoming. From Empress Vorthy herself. Play it. The Empress appeared, composed but paler than usual. Her eyes fixed on him like ancient suns. You have made your point, Ambassador Halley. The Empire recognizes your unique capabilities. We are willing to discuss de-escalation. John sipped a fresh cup of coffee. Define discuss. Peace. On your terms. He didn't respond right away. He looked out the viewport, watching distant stars blink. You know, he said at last, I spent 20 years in this job trying to prevent what just happened today. We offered you seats at our tables, shared food, stories, tech. And every time, you looked down your noses and muttered about monkeys with missiles. That was not my doing, she said evenly. No, John agreed. But it was yours to stop. And now you've lost 73 capital ships, 3 planetary outposts, and, several thousand troops who just don't exist anymore. The Empress tilted her head. You will restore them? They're not dead, John said. Not in the way you think. They're just somewhere else. Long enough to be reminded that war with humans doesn't end in fire. It ends in confusion, regret, and long, uncomfortable silences. He leaned forward again. Don't mistake restraint for mercy. We haven't even started phase 2. The Empress exhaled slowly. What do you want? John considered. We want you to stop treating us like a science experiment gone wrong. We want your fleets out of our quadrant. We want acknowledgement. Not superiority. Not dominance. Just the truth. We are not like the others. And if we refuse, John's voice dropped. Then we pressed the second button. The screen went black. Far across the stars, in the quiet spaces between satellites and celestial dust, ships continued to disappear. Not in bursts of flame, not with screams, but with a soft, soundless blink, like the universe was erasing typos. By nightfall, the number reached 100. Earth slept, and the galaxy, for the first time in eons, did not. Aboard the command vessel Brilliance Ascendant, Admiral Zarnix stood in front of the translucent display wall as he watched red markers blink out, one after another. He no longer spoke. He didn't rage. He didn't bark orders. His claws tapped silently on the glass, rhythmically, like a predator trying to stay calm while surrounded by unseen beasts. His war council stood behind him, pretending not to notice that the Admiral had been staring for 3 straight hours. We need answers, he said finally. Commander Vulcan stepped forward, cautious. We have interrogated every data stream, every surveillance drone. The humans haven't launched a single known ship. Their energy signatures remained stable. No known weapon was fired. No trace elements. No detonation residue. No screams. Zarnix turned. Then how are we losing vessels? Why are our troops simply vanishing? They press a button, Velkin said helplessly. And something happens. That answer was not sufficient. I want a team, Zarnix declared. Infiltration grade. Small. Discreet. Send them to Earth. I want humans studied. I want to know what they are hiding. What the hell their species has done to us. Velkin hesitated. Sir, Earth is a death world. Our infiltration units are not trained for unpredictable variables. Zarnix narrowed his eyes. Then make sure they don't talk to toddlers. The team was assembled in under 6 hours. 5 elite operatives, genetically adapted for hostile terrain, cultural mimicry, and emotional suppression. They were known as Spectre Division, so secret even most of the Empire believed them a myth. They arrived in orbit above Earth 2 days later, cloaked in a shell of reflective quantum fabric. Their mission was simple: extract a sample of human behavior and return. Find out what the button really was. Learn their weaknesses. Exploit them. They landed in Kansas, not because it was strategic, because it was the only location with low-tech shielding that wouldn't fry their stealth gear. Spectre Lead, designation Vorn, was first to step onto the crunchy gravel outside a rural gas station at 2:03 a.m. The other 4 followed silently, scanning for signals. The station was lit with a buzzing neon sign that read Wally's all night. Inside, one elderly man was reading a newspaper, feet up on the counter, drinking from a mug labeled Number 1 Grandpa and still armed. Proceed, Vorn said. They walked in. The man didn't look up, didn't panic, didn't even seem to notice their biological irregularities. One of them had 6 fingers. One was levitating slightly. Y'all look like government, the old man said casually. Or LARPing. Vorn blinked. LARPing. Live action role-playing, said one of the others, already checking a dictionary implant. Right, the man said, folding the paper. Can I help you find folks, or are you just casing the place for vending machine secrets? We seek a human, Vorn said carefully. One representative specimen, untouched by command hierarchy. Civilian, not military. The man raised an eyebrow and pointed to a short figure at the back of the store. That one's been arguing with a soda machine for 10 minutes. Might be what you're after. The team turned. A young man, mid-20s, hoodie up, cargo shorts, and carrying a small duffel, was indeed engaged in a fierce negotiation with a vending machine. The vending machine appeared to be winning. Come on, just take the dollar. This is legal tender, you corporate stooge. He smacked the side. The machine groaned. A can of cherry cola rolled out like it had surrendered in shame. Vorn nodded. He'll do. They approached quickly. 2 of the team flanked him. The man turned, raised his soda, and said, You guys selling Girl Scout cookies or collecting souls? Vorn activated a stun implant. Come with us. The human looked down at the blinking device and sighed. Great. It's a Tuesday, isn't it? The next 5 seconds happened very fast. One alien reached out. The man moved. The soda can became a weapon, launched at an angle that struck the side of Vorn's head and caused a cascade failure in his ocular implant. The second alien lunged. The man ducked, swept a leg, pulled a folding chair from a nearby aisle, and brought it down with brutal precision. The old man behind the counter kept sipping coffee, nodding approvingly. By the time 3 aliens were down, the remaining 2 backed away, confused. This wasn't a soldier. There had been no comms device, no visible weapon, just reflexes and an ability to fight with junk food and lawn furniture. I'm not going with you, the man said. Also, thanks for helping me realize cherry cola's a defensive tool. Might patent that. He turned, picked up his bag, and left. The door chimed politely behind him. Inside the gas station, one of the specters tried to rise. The old man gave him a sympathetic glance. Son, next time you want to kidnap someone, maybe don't pick a retired SEAL on a snack run. This is Kansas. Half our veterans live within a football toss of this place. You're lucky you didn't try the bowling alley. The team was extracted 4 hours later. Only one could still speak coherently. What they described was not just an encounter, it was a psychological trauma. The report made it back to the Empire 2 days later. Zarnix reviewed the footage personally. "This was a civilian," he asked flatly. "Off-duty special forces," Velkin corrected. "Human civilians have unusual overlap with military personnel. No outward sign of hierarchy, but strong behavioral combat coding. Improvised tactics. Weaponized sarcasm. And the coffee?" Velkin hesitated. "Maybe sacred. Maybe toxic. Cannot confirm." Zarnix rubbed his temples. "Send another team." Velkin winced. "That was the last team." Zarnix turned away. "You mean?" Velkin nodded. "They've all formally applied for refugee status. To Earth." Silence. Across the command board, yet more ships were blinking out. But this time, the pattern wasn't random. It was strategic. Communications nodes. High-level commanders. Anyone who had voted for the declaration of war, gone. It wasn't a strike. It was a message. On the human side, John Halley watched the growing panic with a neutral expression. He had just returned from a quiet walk through Earth's preserved redwood forests. He sat in his office now, petting a tortoise named Newton, sipping coffee slowly. Oscar, the AI pilot, spoke. Galactic news broadcasts have turned to speculation and prophecy. Several empires are beginning to suspect psychological warfare. Some have pulled their fleets back. John set down the mug. "That's phase 2 working nicely." Oscar beeped. "Sir, Empress Vorthy has sent an encoded personal message. She requests an audience. Alone. She is invoking the silence of first blood." John leaned back. That was an ancient rite, used only when an empire was prepared to confess fault and beg without using the word beg. "Schedule it," he said. "Let's see how far the fear has spread." Half a galaxy away, Empress Vorthy stood beneath the towering obelisks of her ancestor's shrine, alone. No guards. No advisors. Just her and the shifting stars above. When the human envoy appeared, a holographic projection filtered through gravitational currents. She bowed her head slightly. "You win," she said. John's image didn't gloat. "I warned you," he said softly. "We tried kindness. You mistook it for weakness. We tried cooperation. You responded with condescension. Now we try silence, and suddenly everyone listens." She nodded. "We mocked your chaos. But it was never chaos. It was camouflage." John didn't answer. "I cannot speak for the entire empire," she continued. "But I can stop the bleeding on my side. I can recall what fleets remain. I can broker peace." John tilted his head. "Can you convince Zarnix?" Her lips thinned. "Zarnix will never bend. Then he will vanish." She shivered. "Not from cold." "Just tell him," John added, "that if he pushes again, we'll let the toddlers respond next time." Her eyes widened. Then he was gone. Zarnix, in his final act of defiance, launched a small probe fleet toward Earth's solar edge. Not an attack, he claimed, a recon mission. But the intent was clear. John was waiting. Not with missiles. With a screen. The probe fleet's sensors flickered on to find a broadcast. A human child in a school play, dressed as a shark, singing about friendship. In the background, satellite feeds showed the planet's defenses. They weren't military grade. They were overkill. Orbital cannons shaped like art installations. Defense networks embedded in weather systems. A coffee machine that doubled as a railgun. And then silence. One by one, the probe ships vanished. The broadcast ended with a child's voice. "Don't be mean." Zarnix's quarters were found empty the next day. No sign of forced exit. No signs at all. The Empire declared emergency amnesty negotiations immediately after. The galaxy watched in stunned awe. Earth? Earth just posted a new meme. And somewhere, in a quiet little house outside Kansas, a retired SEAL cracked open a cherry cola and smiled. He was expecting visitors. The stars watched silently, cold and unimpressed, as the might of the Galactic Empire fractured beneath its own arrogance. Ships that once symbolized dominance now hung, forgotten, in tactical diagrams that no longer reflected reality. Whole squadrons gone. Generals vanished. Systems erased without fire or sound. The Empire's maps were bleeding red, and no one could find the wound. In the depths of the imperial stronghold, Empress Vorthi stood before the high throne, a relic made from the bones of her predecessor's enemies, a grim declaration of power. But today, she did not feel powerful. Today, she felt mortal. The chamber echoed with the whispers of nervous dignitaries who, just weeks ago, laughed at the idea of human capability. Now, those same voices whispered prayers in languages older than starflight. She raised her hand. The room silenced. "We miscalculated," she said. "We thought the humans were creatures of impulse. Erratic, simple. But we were wrong. Their chaos was not incompetence. It was design. Their smile was not kindness. It was a weapon." At the rear of the chamber, Admiral Zarnix's absence loomed heavier than his presence ever had. He had vanished 3 cycles prior. No warning. No trace. Just a locked door and a silent chamber. His armor remained neatly folded, as though he'd simply stepped out for a stroll. None believed that. Now the galactic elite faced an uncomfortable truth. Humanity was not waiting to be invited to the council table. Humanity had already taken a seat. Quietly, permanently. Back on Earth, John Halley stood inside an unassuming bunker beneath a farmer's co-op in Nebraska, surrounded by a ring of blinking consoles and softly humming machines. To outsiders, this looked like a relic from the Cold War, a dusty command center decorated with faded posters and a jar of pickles nobody dared move. But to those who knew the truth, this was the core, the heart, the Smile Protocol's origin. He stared at the main screen, where a dozen alien languages were scrolling simultaneously. Please, apologies, analysis, fear. The galaxy had finally realized what they were dealing with. Not a rogue species, not savages, but strategists who played a long game beneath layers of misdirection, misinterpretation, and mispronounced memes. Oscar, the AI assistant, pinged softly. Smile Protocol is fully operational. Psychological thresholds exceeded in 63 sectors. 37 enemy factions have declared neutrality. 11 have requested immediate human alignment. Any aggressive postures left? John asked. 1. The Resari Triad. They refuse to acknowledge transmissions. Preparing an observational demonstration. Subtle. Oscar's voice glitched briefly, as if smiling. Of course. John exhaled and picked up a worn photo frame from his desk. A girl, maybe 10, stood beside him, both of them grinning under a banner that read National Science Fair Champion. First use of tactically confusing robots in social environments. She'd built drones that threw glitter and played smooth jazz mid-conflict. Now she was 19 and worked in predictive warfare modeling. Of course. Sir, Oscar continued, you have a direct message from Empress Vorthi. Live feed. Put her through. The screen flickered to life. Vorthi appeared not in regal robes, but in a simple garment of mourning, dark blue, unadorned. Her tendrils were tucked back, a universal sign of humility among her people. Ambassador Halley, she said quietly, I come not with further conditions, but with clarity. We can no longer deny what has been done, or what has been lost. My empire is unraveling, and I see now you warned us. John didn't gloat. His face remained unreadable. We warned everyone. And no one listened, she agreed. Because you smiled. Because your species laughed and played and insulted its own leaders on public channels. Because we saw chaos and assumed it meant disorganization. We did not understand the depth of your capacity. He set the photo frame down. No one ever does, until it's too late. What is Smile Protocol? She asked. John tilted his head. You really want to know? She nodded. He stood and walked over to the central console, placing his palm against the scanner. Lights surged around the walls. A soft hum filled the chamber, like the deep inhale before a storm. It's not a weapon in the traditional sense, he began. It's conditioning. Psychological reorientation. Over years, decades, even centuries, we fed you our worst traits. Broadcast them freely. Rage, incompetence, narcissism, dancing bears on unicycles. You saw those things and believed we were harmless. Distracted. Vorthy listened in silence. We let you believe we were irrational, emotional, a fluke of evolution. We laughed at your condescension. We leaned into it. And in the background we built this. He gestured around the room. The protocol's core function is perception modulation, targeted strategic erasure, controlled disappearances, systems-based myth engineering. A single button doesn't launch missiles, Empress. It launches doubt. That's far more effective. And the disappearances? Phase 1. Displacement using spatio-temporal resonance fields. No casualties. Not yet. Phase 2 is ongoing. Phase 3, he paused. Let's hope we don't get there. She swallowed hard. And if someone tries to test you again? We've prepared incentives, he said. We've built 1,000 different endings to the same story. And none of them end with us losing. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Vorthy said, "What do you want from the galaxy?" John walked back to his chair and Saturday nothing. That's what scares you most. We don't want to conquer. We don't want to subjugate. We want peace, but not the kind you define as everyone obeying the strongest voice in the room. We want the kind where no one dares raise their voice in the first place. That kind of peace is impossible. John's voice dropped. Not if you make the alternative look worse. Vorthy stared at him. This strange human, this architect of calm destruction. And then she nodded, slowly. I will send the final declaration, she said. Unconditional peace. Immediate withdrawal from all contested zones. We'll speak your name in caution, not derision. Just speak in truth, he replied. That's all we ever asked. The feed ended. Oscar chimed. Transmission recorded. Peace draft circulating. Shall we deactivate Phase 2? No, John said. Leave it running. Let it linger. Let them remember the quiet that followed the storm. Outside, Nebraska rolled on. Cows grazed. A boy threw a frisbee. No one would have guessed that 5 miles beneath the cornfields, the most powerful deterrent in galactic history was sipping decaf. Meanwhile, on the Reese-Sorry front, their flagship Oblivion's bite prepared to fire on a minor human satellite believed to be a communications relay. It charged weapons. A countdown began. And then, the ship went dark. Not destroyed. Not attacked. The crew simply vanished. The ship drifted, empty. Inside the command core, a simple message looped. We are done asking. The Reese-Sorry triad surrendered within 12 hours. Back on Earth, John stood alone at sunset, watching the horizon burn orange behind miles of wheat. A quiet rang in his ears, the kind that followed success and sacrifice in equal measure. Doris joined him, slushy in hand, chewing on the straw. So we done? She asked. He didn't look away from the sky. For now. She nodded. Good. Because my thumb's sore from holding that button. He chuckled, low and tired. You didn't have to keep holding it. She stared. I didn't. Silence. He looked at her. You did, didn't you? She blinked slowly. You're telling me I've been holding a dead man's switch for 4 weeks for no reason. I thought it was symbolic. She sucked aggressively on the straw, then turned to walk off. I'm buying myself a new thumb. Alone again, John sat down on a bench overlooking the fields. A soft breeze carried the scent of rain. Far above, the galaxy spun, still confused, still reeling, still learning. He knew they would never look at humanity the same way again. They wouldn't dare. And somewhere across a dozen star systems, the Smile protocol pulsed quietly in the background, never shouting, never boasting. Just watching, waiting.